What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast. This is my second in-person interview. I'm very excited to hang out here with Christian from the Hates. This is Houston's longest-running punk rock band, singer-songwriter, guitar player. What's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good.
Man, this is awesome, man. Okay, we're just gonna jump right in. We've been chit-chatting a little bit before I hit record, so I want to know, like, how did the Hates start? Give me some history from like the 70s. They started playing in what, 78?
That's correct.
78. So I mean, we're talking about the genesis of the genre. You guys were around the very beginning, so
Right.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I'm actually surprised I started a punk rock band because I was just more of a music fan.
Okay.
And basically, I made the transition from buying import records from London, from record stores in the past, like prog rock stuff.
Okay.
And then suddenly, lots of times you'd have to list, if they didn't have that record, an alternative.
Oh, okay.
There was no internet. You were sending them something by mail, and they couldn't just be writing you back and forth. Sometimes you even needed to include postage.
Yeah.
For them to reply or mail stuff to you, and they wanted you to make one or two choices. And suddenly I started getting all these punk rock records.
That's awesome.
And most of them were independent released. Just the band.
For sure.
I guess what now people call DIY.
Yeah,
That was the terminology for it. And I said, wow, I love this stuff. And basically the only thing that was coming across here, Warner Brothers had signed up the Ramones, the Talking Heads, and Blondie, and television, but that's not really hardcore stuff, if you want to call it, for lack of terminology. These bands were really, really fast and furious.
Right.
And so I was living in an apartment off of 290 and West 34th Street.
Okay.
And I thought what was really kind of funny was I felt like I was going down into Montrose area to go to listen to bands play. Unfortunately, they were just cover bands, but I wanted to get into listening to live music. And sometimes I'd go out to Telephone Road. There's a place called On the Border.
Okay.
And it's still just cover bands. You'd go in there and the bands are playing Ted Nugent or playing Styx or something like that. And also, I was just going anywhere that I could find either a music store or a record store. And by that time, there was a head shop across the freeway called Oasis.
Okay.
And right at the corner where I lived in an apartment complex, there was a gasoline station, and it closed down and it turned into a gentleman's club.
There you go.
And that's where Nicole Smith was dancing at. I forgot her full name or whatever.
Nicole Smith. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, you know who she is. She married that really old, a 70-year-old millionaire.
Like Anna Nicole?
Anna Nicole Smith.
Oh,
yeah.
dang.
So I thought it was really funny that right there was that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I do know who that is. Yes.
So I still felt like basically you either had to go out to a country western club or you had to go out to a cover rock club. So some strange events happened. Like for instance, there was a club called Steamboat Springs across the street from the Galleria, and Iggy Pop was playing his Lust for Life tour with David Bowie at the University of Houston. Well, the Dead Boys were the opening act, and I had just gotten a record of the Dead Boys, and I got a record of Richard Hell, and so I was getting hipped out to New York. There was stuff like the Neon Boys, which Richard Hell was in, and but it still wasn't that, really rocking. So because they were sending more stuff like Patti Smith and stuff like that, and a lot of the other stuff seemed to be like they were still stuck in the 50s. They were doing doo-wop and those Link Ray and all this kind of stuff. They were still bringing back all these rockabilly acts, and these other guys were still just wearing pompadours and playing all this kind of stuff. So there were still people doing like R&B stuff and things like that. So I go like, I don't know how I found out about it, but I think I was looking in the paper. I was going like, my God, the Dead Boys? I said, is this the same band? They're opening up for Norah Jones, Ravi Shankar's daughter. She was doing a country western solo tour, and the Dead Boys had booked themselves in this gentleman's. It was like where people went like businessmen.
Yeah.
It was a country western club, but it was more like upscale country western.
Sure.
So Norah Jones was playing, and the Dead Boys decided, since they were going to be opening for Iggy Pop at the University of Houston, they booked themselves the day before opening for Norah Jones. So I went to go see them.
What year was that?
1978.
Dude, that's amazing.
So basically the first three concerts I saw was that, And I used to go out to this place called On the Border,
Okay.
and it was a biker bar, but it used to be a country western bar. And I, just for grins, I was just going anywhere and anywhere, just trying to see where anything was at. And suddenly, the Runaways and the Ramones were booked to be there.
Oh, wow.
And what kind of pissed me off was I took my camera. I was into taking pictures at the time. They said, "Oh, you can't come inside with your camera." But when I went down the street, I stopped at a 7-Eleven just to get a Coke or something, and the van pulls up, and who comes out? The Ramones. Because it turns out they have a ritual after they play a show. Johnny has to have a thing of milk and powdered donuts.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So-
that sounds delicious.
So here I am. I go, I hope you guys don't mind. Can I take pictures of you? So I took pictures, and you can see these pictures I took of the Ramones and the Dead Boys out on my online. I posted them many a time. So I feel like that turned me on to that. And then I had an 8-track recorder at the time, so I was recording all my 45s and all this stuff, listening to them in my car on an 8-track deck.
Dude, it sounds exactly like what I was doing just like 20 years prior. Like, it's like, that's why I'm grinning, because we had like this very similar journey. I was going anywhere and everywhere to find, at the time, CDs and tapes. And anytime I could go to a club, I was trying to go. And I mean, even like you're saying, in country western clubs, CBGB, that's what they started out as. It's like it wasn't like a punk rock club. It didn't start out as that. I can't remember exactly what it all stands for, but it's like country, bluegrass, western, something like that.
Exactly.
That was a very common thing in the 70s. Because country music, they played it live because people danced to it. A lot of venues catered to that kind of music.
Well,
so.
supposedly the story with CBGB's is Hilly Michaels was up on a ladder. He was putting his sign up on the marquee,
Okay.
and the members of television walk by and they go, "Hey, we got a band." He goes, "Are you guys a country western band?" They go, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Well, you can start next week."
Let's
They
go.
lied, you know.
Yeah.
They were
Good bands.
And he saw after they played, he goes, "You guys ain't a country western band," but they were having Blondie and the Ramones and other acts open up for them when they were doing stuff. Well, anyway, I'm digressing. So I went down there and to see the Ramones and the Runaways play, and I just thought it was so great that I got to take some photographs. And I'm forgetting what the manager's name was. Anyway, so I guess I was getting pulled in. You know, I'm seeing these bands, and I said, why don't I get a guitar and start playing? And I feel like it just made me go, baptism of fire. I said, you know, I can see that playing guitar just isn't enough. Start a band, write some songs. So I went around now to these record stores and these head shops, and I was putting up those index cards.
Okay.
And I was writing my name, and I said I was looking for a band. But the thing that really helped me out was there was actually a local agency that you paid them, and they would print out lists of people who were looking to play. And he said to me, he says, what's bad is you're looking for people to join your band. We list people to play in cover bands. And he goes, I'll list you. He goes, but I really feel that he lied to me. What he did was he put me on there, and I started getting people calling me saying, hey, you're a guitarist. Can you come down to Sharpstown Mall? We play at this pizza parlor, and we need a guitar player. I go, no, thank you. But strange enough, as people start calling me, I go, how would you like to play in my band? And of course, you know, a bass player is like, well, I'm looking forward to playing in a band that plays Journey. I go, can't do that for you. And the next person would be like, and this guy, a high school guy called me from Jersey Village, and he said, hey, I'm looking to play in a band that plays Deep Purple and somebody else. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I said, well, I'm playing in a punk rock band. He goes, well, what's that? I said, well, why don't you come down and audition for me? And basically in Spring Branch, they had a storage lot, and they weren't advertising this, but I went ahead and I rented the storage space so I could practice him. Of course, there's no air conditioning. Man, they were angry because as soon as I started auditioning, it was something, the door flew open, and the manager was this woman, and her son was the assistant. They're glaring at me, and then they slammed the door back. They go like, they were angry, but they didn't want to kick me out. But
they probably just weren't expecting like some like crazy, especially, I don't know if you had a mohawk back then, but back then if they saw that, they're like, what the heck is going on?
But at the same time, I wasn't disturbing anybody. There was no,
right.
All the neighbors were just people who were storing stuff. You know?
Well, that's why they shouldn't bother anybody. I've seen a couple of practice spaces that had signs that said we don't allow this, but I've also seen one that said, hey, look, you can work on your car here, you can practice with your band here, on little placards up on the window. It just depends on who's running it.
Hey, I'll tell you, there's more power to you, because practicing at the end of a hallway in a storage space, no air conditioning, you're in there. It's a hot box. You're sweating away. So we had to step out every once in a while just get a little air. I used to laugh because the drummer wasn't wearing a shirt. He'd get up and he'd paint the wall, with his perspiration. But anyway, so that's how basically it started. And as far as going out and playing shows, there was the High Noon Saloon down in Montrose. And then there's all these gay bars. And the thing that got me was usually when I'd approach other people, they wanted a press pack, they wanted a recording, and especially they wanted to know if you played somewhere else. And I said, well, it's kind of catch-22. I said, no, I haven't played anywhere else. But the thing that got me was the gay bars, no questions asked, they just let us play.
Oh, dude, the gay bars were the best.
Yeah.
And
to me, you have to be playing, and either you're not going to get a club owner to come out and listen to you play. There was this place called, I forgot the name of them, but they came out to listen to us play at our practice, and they said, hey, you guys got the gig, but you guys got to play a set of Eagles. I said, no thanks. I said, we're not going to learn how to play other people's stuff.
Yeah, no.
I said, you take us what we do. And it was a place called Hula Hands, and they were in Lower Westheimer.
Okay.
So that was one thing that didn't work out for us. And I always feel like maybe I should have because later on, some people said you should just lied, gone in there, and done what you did, piss them off.
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst thing to do is tell you can't do it anymore?
Yeah. You said you were going to do this, and you didn't do that,
That's a good story, too. You'd be like, no, man, we went in there and said we're going to do some Eagles tracks, went in there and just rocked that place out.
Yeah.
I like hearing all this stuff because these are all streets and places that, maybe not the places, but all the streets I'm very familiar with because I have lived in Houston my whole life. My memory is pretty bad, but I still remember, Spring Branch, obviously, Westheimer and Montrose. I mean, I know I met you out there. It was just in passing, but I used to wait on the bus and just you would see me and you would ride by. This is 2004, 2003. You would ride by on your moped, and I was at the cross of Westheimer and Montrose. I'll be waiting on a bus to go into the Heights area. And then I'd be like, what's up, Christian? And you'd be like, hey. And, I see you around all the time. So
there's a million people about that story because actually, I have to laugh, if I walk in a store, it's the scooter guy. And actually, the bass player at the time, he said it made him angry. He said the people, he wished the notoriety I had as being the guy on the moped would transfer over to people knowing that I was the guy playing in the Hates. But more people was like, that's that guy that rides the moped around the town.
Unfortunately, most people would know a moped before a punk band. But, this is cool. So when I called my mom, she called me this morning to tell me about the weather being all bad. And I was like, Mom, guess who I'm going to go talk to today? And she was like, who? And I was like, you remember that dude I told you one day we were riding in your car and we saw him ride by in his moped? And you went, he looks like he might be your friend. And I went, I've met that guy a couple of times. And she goes, oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I said, I'm going to go talk to him today. And she just I could feel her shaking her head to the phone. She's like, well, have fun. She doesn't get it. My mom doesn't understand none of this stuff. But, yeah, man.
I thought it was funny how people would try to get me into stories. There was a guy who was a sports writer, and he wrote a story talking about Kathy Whitmire, the mayor at the time.
Okay.
And he was talking about the Astros.
Okay.
And then he talked about seeing me. I was thinking, what does that have to do with just seeing me? This guy, Christian Arnheider, he's got this big red mohawk, and you can't miss him. You see this guy downtown whenever, blah, blah, blah.
It's because punk rockers are cool people, man. Look, all my friends are cool, dude. I got cool friends, man. Ryan from Liberty Dust's a cool dude, man. You're a cool dude. Colin's a cool dude. So, people want to be associated with rad stuff. I get it. I mean, it is kind of lame, but I
hope people feel I'm a kind, easygoing guy because actually, the Hates weren't going for the angry.
Which is an ironic name. Because the music is, when I was doing the review of your latest, dude, first off, we'll get into that in a second. That new record, 2024, still putting out, in my personal opinion, high quality music. That's amazing, man.
Well, what's going to be really cool is since you've listened to it and critiqued it, is for me to go back in the studio and do some editing to the vocals and stuff.
Oh man, I mean that was my only.
Please don't be apologetic. You were correct. I was even thinking that before I posted it, but now I've got an appointment to go back in. So
nice.
You expect to be listening to a remix.
I will absolutely check that out. I'll listen to it on the stream and everything.
Thank you for saying that because I like to feel like I'm grateful to feel like I believe in these songs, and it's great to feel like you really got something that's good now.
Right.
Because I feel like there's a lot of bands, just my opinion, there's a lot of bands that start out really great and then they never put out.
Oh no, that's objective fact. There's a lot of bands, and it's not even necessarily their fault. Sometimes they just get tired of doing it. And in my opinion, if you got tired of doing it, maybe you should just stop doing it. But whatever, man. I'm not judging nobody. But it was really nice to hear. And plus, Colin's my buddy, so it's nice to hear like him doing some stuff in a band that I consider relevant still. And yeah, it's awesome. I don't know.
Well, let me tell you a little weird story about the recording. So this recording right here, 2 years ago, or let's say on the 2024, January the 20th.
So about a year ago.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
This guy approached me about it. He says, hey, I'd like to record you guys. So the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to test myself with the recording. I didn't want these songs to be recorded and not come out good.
Sure.
So I actually put myself on the spot and I wrote material for the month or two fall previous to that.
Okay.
And we went and recorded that and released a CD. So now I knew that sounded good. All this stuff that's on this new recording, when COVID came, I thought I was going to make 2 or 3 of these gigs. We had like 3 gigs booked at Rutgers and et cetera, and one at a time. They all started shutting down because of COVID.
Yeah, that was scary.
I lost my job, and my sweetheart, she said, you need to do something with COVID being around, so you need to do a live cast. She goes, but I got 2 rules for you. Number 1, it can't be the band, and number 2, it can't be electric. Only you playing your acoustic guitar. And I said, okay. And I got tired of just going on there and just playing material. I said, I need to push myself. So I started writing songs.
Like specifically for that medium?
Yes. And there were some songs that weren't very good, so I threw them away. But you're listening to the songs that were culled, which I thought were the good songs from
Oh, nice. So that's what this album is stuff from those sessions, essentially.
from the COVID sessions.
Okay.
And it's funny to think that they were just played acoustically, and now here they are taken to the Hates, add drums, add bass to them, and now they're electric and they're hard rocking,
I think a lot of bands probably do that, and I don't know this 100%, but I'm 99% sure that Rancid, that's how they write all their music, is acoustic, and then they go in and they have essentially sessions where they demo everything, and they decide what they're going to keep, similar to what you're doing, and it's a few more people involved and not just one person writing it all, but yeah, I think a lot of bands probably do that. I know whenever I used to write, and it wasn't a lot of stuff, I did like an EP, and then I made a mess of everything, but I wrote everything on acoustic guitar, and then I said, here, this is what it sounds like. I would even plug it in and turn the gain up a little bit to kind of get an idea what it might sound like, and then I'd write it all on acoustic, because if it can sound good on an acoustic guitar, it should sound good plugged in my opinion. So acoustics are far harder to play.
Well, these songs were definitely written. This is just my opinion, but I feel like playing electric guitar has a little bit different feel than playing acoustic guitar.
Oh yeah.
All these songs that were written on the acoustic guitar were only played with C, A, G, E, and D. Some people call them cowboy chords.
Okay.
They're all only played on open chords.
I mean,
not even bar chords.
I'm a bar chord guy. I'm not a very good guitar player, just to be very open and honest about that. Not a very good guitar player. I'm good at hearing things. That's my gift, is I can hear something and I can come up with a melody. It's transitioning it to the instruments that I'm really not good at. Like, very Rick Rubin-esque, like, okay, Rick Rubin. But like, that kind of idea where he's like, no, I think this needs to sound like this, and I can come up with an idea of something, and I can listen to something and tell you how to maybe change it. I'm not gonna say improve it, but change it to where maybe something suits me better. Yeah, writing music has been, I'm more of a, I write poetry and stuff like that. I keep a journal and things, it's on my phone, but it's not a physical thing anymore.
Cool.
God bless, the ease of a phone. I used to keep it all written, but on paper. But so okay.
You want to go back to the early stuff?
I do. So when you started the band, 78. When did you do the first recording?
We did it in 1978.
Okay.
So just to give you history, the band came out. They were called Zyklon B.
Okay, I didn't know.
And we did a performance at the University of Houston. And fortunately for me, I have 2 friends of mine who shot videos. They shot a video of that, which I recently posted a video of that show. And Scott Summers, who does a show on Channel 39, he interviewed me that day for doing that performance. So then we went from Zyklon B to being the Guyana Boys Choir. And the reason that happened was because I was missing a band member at the time, and there was a place downtown called Masonic Temple.
Okay.
It says Masonic Temple on the outside. It's a 2-story building, but it's really a place where it hasn't been a place where the Masons Guild functions out of for decades. So basically, as far as what I knew, people were doing private parties.
Okay.
And there was a private party scheduled, and the Zydeco accordion player named Clifton Chenier was hired as a performance artist. But someone who was friends there was the San Antonio mayor's brother, and he thought, why doesn't Christian play? And instead of making an excuse like I said, well, I'm down one player, he goes, you're gonna play. And the Jim Jones massacre happened at the time.
Oh, geez.
So I wrote a song about the Jim Jones massacre, and we performed as the Guyana Boys Choir.
Okay.
And the day afterwards, those friends of mine who know how to shoot video, they actually shot video of the performance, and so there's that. And then I went into the recording studio the following week to record, since I had material I felt to record. And then that was in December of 1978.
Okay.
So then when January of that was 1977. So when January of 1978 started up,
Okay.
I changed the band name to Christian Oppression. And that's when we had Robert Kaner and Glenn Cervisto on drums.
Great play on words. I like that. I like that.
So we played as that at a place called Paradise Island, but they did not want punk rock bands there. But they were doing very well, doing the thing like they wanted to have a cover band play there all week and have waitresses. The place was a dive, and the place used to be several things. It used to be a restaurant, stuff like that. But the place was basically just and really everything around it. It was a red light district. It was on South Main.
Okay.
And just up and down the street were nothing but strip clubs. I mean, right next to it was a strip club that had a two-story woman, and her top is falling off. She just got her bikini bottom on, and you walk between her legs to go through the doorway of the strip club. So the people that videotaped, they shot a video of us
Let's go.
in front of that strip club. And then by the time there was an organization on the University of Houston of Yippies, and a guy named Henry Weisborn was one of the members, and he had a pot legalization fanzine called Ultra.
Okay.
So he contacted me. He was actually getting frustrated because he kept on going to Paradise Island, and he kept on missing us perform there.
Okay.
So somehow he got my phone number and he called me. He goes, listen, I want you to come to U of H. I want to interview you. And I know that my Ultramac fanzine isn't appropriate for doing a punk rock feature, so I'm going to put out a fanzine called Wild Dog, and you guys are going to be on it. And before he was able to put out Wild Dog, Flipside out in Los Angeles, he got to write an article about the Houston scene, and they printed that up.
Nice.
And then Wild Dog came out. And then there's this thing called Rock Against Racism. People probably heard about the ones that happened in London. Well, there was a New York branch, and they had a group called Avis Davis Joy Rider.
Okay.
They were just a cover band. They were kind of 50s and 60s rock and roll, and they were going to be the headliner down here. But the university got cold feet. They just felt like that was just too radical, be having a Rock Against Racism concert on their campus. So it was rescheduled at Paradise Island on April Fool's Day of 1978. And I would say that's probably the first time you had all the local bands you could ever think of. On the bill was Legionnaire's Disease, Really Red, Plastic Idols, Sperm Whale, AK-47. I'm probably forgetting some names, but basically if you went there that day, you probably saw every band. You probably saw every local band that probably existed at the time.
Dude, Really Red's really good too.
Yeah, so and Christian Oppression changed their name. Actually, going up to that show, we were Christian Oppression, and we changed our name to the Hates on that day.
What was the reason? Was there a specific reason?
The bass player looked at me, he says, I don't like Christian Oppression as the name for the band. And I just had to think really quick, well, what can we do? And right then, the guy was on a ladder on the marquee putting up Christian Oppression. I go, you need to change it. I apologize, he took all that lettering down and changed it to the Hates being on the marquee.
I kind of like the Hates a little. I mean, there's a certain cleverness to Christian Oppression, seeing as that your name is Christian and all, but like, double entendres are great, but the Hates is just so, I don't know, man. I guess maybe because it's been around my whole life, to me it's iconic, so like, I really like the name, but it just kind of comes right off the...
So let me tell you one last Christian Oppression story then.
Oh no, tell us.
So as people nowadays, what they call yacht rock, back then there was people listening to Apollo Crews and Steely Dan, and I'm not remembering Christopher Cross, all these bands. Well, a lot of people there was disco music, a lot of people were into wearing Hawaiian print shirts and listening to this easy, soft rock kind of music. So there was a club down the street called Paradise Beach, and that was kind of, and there was Uncle Sam's. So there was people who would go dressed up disco one night, and then another night they'd go out and they would be doing this. I don't know what name they had for doing that, but there was also confettis next to a disco next to the Galleria. People were, one night they were going out, there was probably a country western night, and another night would be this, come out with your Hawaiian print shirt on and listen to all this kind of music. So what I thought was funny was this Paradise Beach place, somehow they must have gotten, they got approached by some big promoter, and they brought in the Cramps one night, they brought in the Ramones, they brought in Iggy Pop, the Pretenders, they brought in the Jam. So
Nice.
this gave an opportunity for all these local bands to be on the bill. But the bad thing about it was TNT Productions was somehow in charge of putting these bands on, and they really put off a lot of local bands being on the bill. When I contacted them, they said, "Oh no, you got to be signed with TNT Productions if you're going to play our venue." Well, I went around them. I just walked into, I had to me, I was learning everything as I went along. I just walked into the club and asked, I said, "Can I speak to someone who runs the place?" And I said, "Look, I play in a local band called Christian Impression. Can we open up for some band?" And they go, "Yeah." And TNT Productions called me and they say, "How'd you guys get on that show? You guys shouldn't have been on that bill."
I mean, look, if in my opinion, especially back then when you needed to have the support of a bigger act to get yourself off the ground so that you can then do that for somebody else, that's the deal. You need opportunity to be able to get experience, like you were saying, Catch-22, right? It's the same with jobs these days. Man, hey, I want to get a job as a bartender. Have you ever been a bartender? Well, no, I'm only 23 years old. I just got out of school. Not yet, but I've got some ideas what I want to do. I like the art of it and blah, blah, blah. Well, you need to have experience first. Man, how the hell am I going to ever get that if everybody says the same thing? It's exactly the same with bands and clubs and stuff.
Yeah, so back then by doing that, I'd have all these articles and stuff like that, and I created what was called a press pack. Nowadays, people have companies you approach, and they make what's called an electronic press pack for you. But back then, they wanted a recording, and all I could do was just give them a tape of us playing at a practice place, and give them a press pack on what little write-ups I had or listings.
Oh, that's inspiring to me. It's exactly what you should have done. It's exactly what you should have done. That is the spirit of punk rock in those actions, because you're like, okay, well, I want to do this. How do I do this? Well, I get up and I go and do this. So many people that I talk to, young people, they're just afraid of like failure, I guess. And it's like, man, I don't know. I'm so glad that I grew up when I did. Maybe even a little earlier would have been nice, because I missed growing up with the internet. I didn't have it. And so I never had to worry about that kind of stuff. So I try things all the time. I just try things. Maybe you'll fail, maybe you won't.
One last story from that period.
No, dude.
I don't know if people have ever heard of this album. It's out on Sire Records, which is actually Warner Brothers.
Yeah, Sire's Warner.
Right. So they came out with this record called No Wave, and it was bands like Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, James Chance, the Contortions. So these bands are, to me, I call them noise bands, but that's what was going on also in New York City. And one of those guys and one of those involved with the No Wave movement, he was in town, and I felt very honored that he came to see Christian Impression play at the Lone Star Saloon, and he went to see us play at Paradise Island.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people that are in a position to help other people, you've got two lanes. You've got the guy who just only really cares about his own successes, and it's like, he's got the power to do that, but he's still trying to get up somewhere else. Or you have the guy who's like, I've got a little opportunity here, let me share that with these people that could use it. And it's always nice to have those people come up and, hey man, I like what you're doing. It's very validating, because sometimes you can get down on yourself, man. I'm sure there's been plenty of times where you just wanted to quit doing it because of whatever was going on in your life.
Exactly, and I always tell myself, I'm glad I didn't quit, because then some other accomplishment would happen after that. And
right.
So I'm going to tell you a story now about when the first record came out.
Okay.
So we recorded it. Strange enough, if everybody knows where Carbach Brewery is at now.
Yeah.
So there's Carbach Lane, but the street next to it was nothing but houses.
Okay.
And there was a Sound Arts recording studio in the car garage in the back.
Okay.
Just a one-car garage, and that's where we recorded at. and we sent the record to be pressed out at a plant out in Arizona. So the record came back, and fortunate for me, there was people putting out fanzines at the time. And on the back of these fanzines would be either addresses to radio stations, most of them would be college radio stations, other people doing fanzines, so you'd send these records out all over the United States and maybe sometimes overseas, and you get these people that would write reviews, so that it started creating a network. So you either got people playing your record on a radio station, or you got people who were doing reviews, and then you get other bands. Like, I had to laugh because who's that guy that plays in the Murder Junkies, his brother who passed away?
Oh, G.G. Allen? Or
G.G. Allen. He started writing me like crazy.
Really?
But he had so many bands before he was known for it. He started sending me every record and every incarnation of it. He had a band called the Texas Nazis one time. And another band was called the Delaware, he kept on using, and I just I said, man, who is this guy? I mean, he was really, back then you could say he was really DIY. He was one of the people who was just writing to me all the time. I had a comic book out. He thought I was a fanzine, so he thought I was going to review his records. But I told him, I said, I'm in a band. I can't review your records. Well, I just think it's good you have a record because to me, that's promotion. It's somebody else listen to my record. So, but what I was going to tell you was I don't know if people ever heard of this guy, but his name is Dirksen. And there was a Filipino restaurant in San Francisco called the Mabuhay. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. So I found out back then, California, a lot of places would have these two-story restaurants, and they would rent out the upstairs where people would, after hours, people would put on shows. A lot of times punk bands would take advantage of the situation.
Okay.
Well, back then, the Mabuhay, this Filipino, I think also I was told there was also maybe a gay bar. And so he was putting on these shows, and he was like a really, he was like your rude MC kind of guy. He'd come out, he'd have a penis hanging off his nose, and he'd just tell all these dirty jokes and stuff like that, introducing the bands. And he was also,
that's awesome.
He was putting out this flyer. On one side of the flyer was a listing of all the acts that were playing that month at the Mile High. If you flipped it over, it had this thing called the Bay City Radio. So one radio station would be in San Jose, one would be in San Francisco, all around the Bay Area, and I got it sent to me because our record went #1 on this record chart.
That's awesome.
All the Whites Are Going Negro.
Oh my goodness.
And then our People's Temple song made like 3 on another record chart and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Do you have all that stuff that you got?
I do.
You have all that? That's awesome. Man.
I got boxes and boxes of stuff.
Man, it's probably like a
So
timeline.
Oh, I'll tell you something I thought was funny. So when I first started, here was a guy living in an apartment, and in my bedroom, I had my bed, and I had my stereo over here, and in my closet, I had this box where I just started putting fanzines in, I started putting records in, and of course, you can imagine since then, I started having storage boxes. But I laugh about it. I can remember when I first started.
Just a couple.
It's just a box, and just had several fanzines and records, and it blew up,
Right? Yeah, I mean, dude, okay, fanzines. Like, I look at my channel like a magazine. You can come to my channel, you can get interviews, you can get album reviews, you can get top 10 lists. It's a digital magazine, but it's a magazine essentially, right? I love fanzines, man. Whenever I was younger, anything I could get my hands on that was written and had a photograph in it, I wanted to read it, look at it. Liner notes on albums was always really important. I think that that's the one thing that I wish younger kids would maybe appreciate a little bit more is like physical, the work that went into it, and also like the act of like it's a relationship at this point. I've got this piece of artwork, I get to listen to it and look at it, I get to learn from it, meet new people, hopefully, potentially, But yeah, I mean, I bet all those fanzines are pretty amazing to look through. Do you ever sit down and look at them?
So if I'm not taking up too much time, I'll tell you a little story about some fanzine. So back then, I was such a music avid fan. You'd either read Cream magazine, that was coming out of Detroit.
Okay.
And you'd read Rock Journal. Lisa Robinson was kind of your alternative rock music writer. So basically, the most alternative stuff you could ever get at the time was these people and Lester Bangs.
Okay.
So these people were known for writing about people like the Velvet Underground, Iggy Pop, the MC5. But that was about it. To me, I'm grateful for the fanzines because they were writing about all these grassroots punk rock bands. I'm not criticizing them. I thought what was really funny was at the time I also used to read a lot of comic books back then.
Yeah.
And back in the day there was Charleston Publication, and I thought it was kind of, wait a minute. Those are the same people that put out Robot Killer comic book that I read. And suddenly this thing, it came out from Charleston publication. It was called Punk. But guess who was on the cover of the first issue? Tom Petty. I'm going,
What?
And I'm going like, and they thought they had to put Tom Petty on the cover because they felt it's mainstream people would not. But so when you opened it on the inside, it had bands like Suicide, The Clash, Blondie, the New York Dolls. So to me, that was about as far as the mainstream was getting a taste of what they were calling alternative or punk rock and stuff like that. But then these fanzines, at first they were kind of being apologetic. They're going like, we're sorry, we're going to write about anything and everything. So there was people who were saying like, we got to write about Blue Oyster Cult and stuff like that, because we don't have enough on writing about just local and national punk rock bands. But after a while, they didn't have that problem anymore. But for some people, if they're looking for some fanzines, there are Sniff and Glue was out in London, and now there's a hardcover book collected of all the Sniff and Glue issues.
That's awesome.
Touch and Go was in. It was in the Midwest. I wish I could remember what city it was in, but they moved to Washington D.C. and they formed a record label. So later on, they became hooked up with people like Fugazi and all those kind of.
Okay.
But they started off early on. God, why can't I remember where they were?
Bro, your memory is amazing. I'm over here. I'm shocked you can remember all this.
So Touch and Go is also in a hardcover, a collection of most of their fanzines. And it's funny. You look at this stuff; it's so crude. You can see that someone was just laying a picture of a record, and then they'd take their typewriter, they'd print some stuff, cut that out of a piece of paper, put like that, Xerox that page.
Oh yeah.
And I knew this, they just Xerox it, and then it comes stapled together. And what I thought was really funny was most of these people would send me a fanzine. They go, hey, if you don't mind, would you rip the stamps off of the envelope I sent you and mail them back to me because I'm going to reuse those stamps. So I guess a lot of times the post office didn't do that print across there, or maybe they would try to erase some of that stuff. So a lot of these fanzine people, they were reusing their stamps because they were short of money.
Yeah, man. I mean, when you're young and poor, you're trying to make something. That's part of the beauty of all of this stuff is that no, it's not about the money, but we have to pay bills. But when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, you don't even care about none of that stuff. You're like, rent. I want to make this album, or I want to make this shirt. I remember screen printing stuff using and it was very bad, mind you, but it was awesome. We screen printed shirts using coat hangers and pantyhose, and we would pull them off real tight, tie them with like a rubber band, cut it off, and use some real just shitty what's the liquid called, emulsion fluid, and start making our own shirts. And sometimes we cut out stencils. I mean, you do what you gotta do.
So to me, that brings up another story right there. I'd go down to Paradise Island, and there was all these bands touring, California bands and all that stuff. But a lot of bands didn't have merch, as people call it nowadays. You go there, you wouldn't have a T-shirt you could buy by that band, or they'd have a record. And what I thought was really nice is a lot of bands you'd be able to bill with to go, hey man, can I trade you one of my records for your record? I go, sure,
yeah.
And I didn't realize at the time, but a lot of these records sell for a lot of money nowadays. You didn't realize these records were just 500 or 1,000 copies being pressed.
Right. No, I mean it's the same now. It's just that those are far more sought after, I would think, because they're very, very.
Now, one thing the Hates did, I think someone else hasn't done, was the first and second EP. I pressed 1,000 copies up, but I was so short of money when I wanted to do the third EP. By then, there was United, and they're still around. I asked them, I said, do I have to press 1,000 copies? They go, no, if you just want, you have to pay for the stampers.
Yeah. And
you have to pay for all, but after that, if you just want to pay for one record being made, I said, okay, I've got enough money, can you print me 50 records? So there's only 50 copies that exist of 30p.
Whoa.
And that's kind of a thing that's out there, that people know that. There's people people out there trying to sell, people who have the 30p, they're out there trying to sell it for $200.
That's crazy. I would love to get my hands on something like that. I just did my first solo vinyl releases on my label, man. I'm really excited to come out in about 3 weeks, man. It's nerve-wracking because it's different now. I mean, even back when I was younger, I remember being able to press vinyl was pretty cheap because it was the alternative to CDs and tapes. We were like, no, let's do records because it's cheap. It's like completely flip-flopped. Records are all collectible now, and so they're way more expensive to make.
And I'm not just saying that because you're saying all that, because I admire you putting out vinyl, because that's what you did back then. That was the medium. But nowadays, you don't think of pressing vinyl unless you really got the money, and sometimes there might be a backlog.
Yes.
Where I remember someone talking to me and go like, oh no, I've already scheduled a record release, and now they told me that the record's not going to be out in time for me to do my record release.
For like 3 years, that was really a big problem. It was happening a lot. And things have slowed down on that end a little bit. And I think somebody recently opened up a plant in Houston that does vinyl pressing in Houston, which I didn't know. It was like brand new, like within the last few months.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that you don't have that problem now with
Yeah.
pressing vinyl and thinking like, oh, I've got to wait.
Vinyl's fun, man. It's got a warmth to it. Like, I don't think the sound is the highest quality because I think a CD's probably got the best quality sound. But there's a warmth, and I know that because you have to mix and master them a little different. You have to pull some of the lows and the highs out. It's going to have a lot more mid-range on a piece of vinyl. There's a warmth to that you don't get on a CD that's got all these really high highs. They're real crisp and they're digital sounding. Like, it's good. I like it, but there's nothing better than dropping that needle down and just sitting there for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is.
And another thing I didn't realize at the time when I was buying all these punk singles, a lot of them I was getting was on colored vinyl, but then I didn't find out till years later through the American Music Journal. They said that they were only doing promotional first. They wanted to get people, because of the competition, they wanted you to buy that record because you knew it was on colored vinyl, because the mass production of the record was going to be only on black vinyl. I mean, nowadays it's crazy. Nowadays, people got splatter and
you'll like the ones I'm doing. They're going to look cool.
Right?
Yeah, I put a little thought into it. But I didn't know that they were doing colored vinyl back then until maybe about a year
ago. I'll give you an example. So like when I bought the Stranglers album, it came with a 45 and it was on white vinyl. But then I found out later, it didn't. After a while, it didn't come with that 45. And a lot of these times, they were also purposely trying to get you to buy it right away because non-LP B-sides.
Yep.
And I thought it was really cool. It was like a band like 999, Lurkers, all this stuff. There was even like people doing gimmicks like putting out a flexi disc.
Yeah, I collect flexies. I love those.
Like I had a Lurkers flexi disc, and I found it was only available if you bought that single, Full On Fallout, stuff like that. But a lot of these other records, like I said, you definitely want to go out and buy their 45s because of the non-LP B-sides.
Yep. You ever listen to the band The Briefs?
No.
They're like a garage rock punk band, but I really enjoy their music. And they just did like a reissue of one of their albums. And I was like, oh, I've already got it. And then on the little bottom it says, if you buy this one, it comes with a flexi. It's got 2 songs. The only way you're gonna get them is on this. We only made 200. I'm like, crap! I'll take one. They got me. But honestly, dude, like I get it. I'm not even mad. It's fun, man. That's what it is, man. Punk rock is very serious a lot of times. There's a lot of serious politics. There's a lot of serious stuff in the world going on. But at the end of the day, man, punk rock is fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a good time. It's supposed to be able to be yourself. And it is just more, in my opinion, it starts with like anti-authoritarian, like just I want to do what I want, man. I have a good time. I hang out with my friends. I want to play fast rock and roll. I don't drink anymore, but I want to drink a beer, go skateboard with my friends. Like, maybe get in a fight. I don't know. Find some girl to hang out with, but I don't want to do what you tell me to do. That's where it started at.
So here's a funny story for you. When the Hates came out with their Texas Insanity cassette, people who skated out at the Easy 7. It's funny how people share stories with me. They said that they had their boombox out there and they would listen to the Hates Texas Insanity, and they created a move called the Texas Insanity.
That's amazing. I would love to get that some kind of video one day. I wonder if anybody ever filmed that. It used to be hard to film stuff. Even in like the 2000s, it wasn't easy. But like back in the 80s and 70s.
Well, I tried to get into filming stuff, and what I thought was funny was nowadays people do stuff on a phone. But before there was a phone, they were selling these recorders, but then you'd have to pay for a subscription to post it or broadcast and stuff like that. And now that just seems archaic now.
Right. Things change so fast now.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't used to change that fast.
I mean, I've got that recorder still, but you wouldn't use that thing,
That's crazy. So, okay, what were the first? Let's say, give me like a quick rundown of like how the '80s go for the Hates. What you do in the '80s? Was there any like marquee moments? Did you play with any bands that you just were really just a fond memory? Like, who were your favorite bands you played with, and how were the '80s to the Hates?
Well, I thought was kind of interesting was I think that's when Fitzgerald's kind of came into existence. For me, it was still writing to bands, and when they came to town, they would say put the Hates on the bill. So I was kind of either trying to book my own show, or being fortunate enough a national act would they usually probably toured and they had already an opener going with a support act,
Right.
but they would add me on as a third band. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, like, people probably don't realize it, but I mean that's not why I did it. But lots of times you play, you're not getting paid, and I go,
Right.
that's not a problem. And they really wanted that third act because the local band was out there making flyers and doing advertising for them.
That's the thing, man. You get the dude on the bottom who's not quite got there yet. They're willing to put in the work, and it's, you know, like I'm working on a deal with a buddy of mine. We're gonna do like a trade thing. Like you when you're first going, man. Like that makes a lot of sense that you'd want a local band on the bill. If you were touring all over the country, and you got an opener with you. A third band's not bad. That's a good night, man. 3 bands is great. 5 or 6 gets to be a lot, but
I thought it was pretty funny because just the other day, I thought it'd been pretty interesting. Warehouse Live had The Exploited, and they had I can't remember the other, but back in the day, it was The Exploited and this other band I can't remember the name.
Total Chaos.
Total Chaos,
Yeah.
and the Hates were the third band.
Nice.
And I've got postings where I thought was really neat was all these here. To me, this is decades later. This is probably the '90s. Might even mean the 2000s, and there's a photograph of me up at Fitzgerald's, and all these people are teenagers, and I'm asking these people, so where do you come from? They say, oh, we come from Sheldon Reservoir. And I go, what's it like for you going to school dressed up like you do? I said, well, we get flack for it, you know. And I said, but strange enough, they've got Punk Rock Day. So now
What?
they have that. And when I was going to high school here in Houston, all you had was Go Texan Day. So that was the day everybody dressed up as a cowboy or something.
Oh, they
like
used
that.
to kick me out of school for having colored hair and stuff. I mean, and that was in the '90s. I mean, it's gotten away. It's just different. I mean, it's just different.
Well, I feel like people get away with nowadays. You know, you walk into a Starbucks or whatever, people got tattoos, they got nose ring and all that stuff. When I was in, I don't want to sound like when I was your age, but I just want to say that when I was in high school, I had friends that had long hair, and that was not part of the dress code. So they wore a short hair wig so they could have long hair.
Wait, really?
Right. But I had people, they'd be walking down the hallway and someone would come and pull that off, and they get kicked out of school and say, why would you kick him out of school? Why can't he just put his hair back under his short hair wig? But no mustaches were allowed. Sideburns, no sideburns. Your hair had to stop midway on your, you know. And I'm thinking, like, nowadays, people would laugh at a dress code like that, you know.
My mom told me recently that when she was in junior high, she had to wear a dress every day, dress in like dress shoes and a blouse, and her hair had to be done. And they had no air conditioner. She was in Texas. She's like, yeah, it was miserable. It was miserable. She's like, we didn't know it was miserable because we didn't have an air conditioned room to like compare it to. We were just at school. It sucked.
When I moved to Houston in 1967, I thought people didn't have air conditioning because I lived out towards Lake Houston. I lived out in the sticks, and everybody had attic fans. And I always kind of wonder now. I can't seem to find anybody that has an attic fan. You basically had this fan, which is in the ceiling of your hallway, and you had your bedrooms and your living room and your kitchen. You had all the windows open, so the air was being drawn in.
Huh.
And I had laughed because
That
I went to work for the school district, and the school district had these programs they made, and they said that Houston is known as the most air-conditioned city in the whole nation.
It's gotta be.
You could have told me that in 1967.
Where'd you move from?
From Panama.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's
I was an
awesome.
Army brat, so it sounds kind of misleading because my father and my grandfather from New York,
Okay.
and they both joined the Army, and they moved back and forth. So if a little bit of time had passed, either earlier or past, I probably would have been born in New York City.
Okay.
So I really feel like that's what really opened my eyes up to, because I really feel like my mother, she was from Panama, and she grew up 5 hours away out on a farm, and when I went to go visit her, they didn't have electricity. And running water, they didn't have running water, and I just feel like I can't get over how I grew up thinking, or growing up knowing an experience like that. And basically what happened was, in the Canal Zone was the American District in Panama, and my mother worked on the Army base, and they had a thing called a PX, and that's where the GIs, and they had a record shop, and my mother worked there. And I still feel that I don't, you know, a lot of people talk about, well, I grew up in a musical family. I don't feel like I grew up in a musical family. It just happened that my mother worked in the record shop, and she brought home records. So the first record she brought home was Elvis Presley.
Right.
And then all these artists like Richie Valens and who sings Blueberry Hill.
Oh man, dude.
Anyway,
I don't know.
those
You have like Little Richard, Chuck
yeah,
Berry.
yeah, Little Richard and stuff like that. So I also feel like it's kind of maybe a good thing that I grew up experiencing 50s rock and roll And then,
yeah.
and then I saw things turn into, but then they still try to have like Fabian and all these kind of people, more clean cut kind of Pat
Right.
Boone and all these people. And then I saw the 60s come along, and my mother would let me, she let me stay up and watch a Pink Floyd concert. So I was
Okay.
getting exposed to Jimi Hendrix and all this kind of stuff.
More psychedelic stuff.
Right, then the psychedelic era came along, but I was going like, wow, this subject matter is kind of like, it was talking about the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
free love, being on the pill. I'm asking my mother, what's being on the pill mean?
She's like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. And so to me, I feel like it was kind of interesting that I grew up, So like for instance, I was 15 years old. I asked my mother for my friend's older brother was playing in a blues band at Old Market Square downtown, and the place is called the Supermarket.
Okay.
And there's still like a red light district. There's nothing but strip clubs everywhere. She let me go. I was 15 years old, and the Supermarket used to be a strip club, and they had cages. I don't know if people
Oh.
see things where have go-go dancers dancing.
Yeah.
So the strippers danced in the cages, but upstairs they had live music. So I got she said, you can stay and watch the first set, but then you got to go home. So I'm walking out of the place, and I'm fixing to get in a car and go home. My stepfather drives by. He saw me.
Uh-huh.
When I get home, he goes, what were you doing down there? And I said, Mom gave me permission to go see this band play. I said, you're grounded.
What?
I got grounded for a couple of months for being down.
Dude, you want to hear something? This is a crazy story, man. And excuse my language I'm fixing to use. I'm going to have to say something that was said to me. So when I think I was 15 or 16. My dad passed when I was 16, so it had to be before then. I was at his house, and my uncle, who's from, I don't know, Vidor, Texas, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, he was at our house visiting, and I didn't really know him very well. His name was Edgar. I didn't know him. And I said, hey, my buddy's picking me up. We're going to go into town and hit up some thrift stores and just kind of go mill around. It was the weekend. And my dad's like, where are you going? And I said, we're going to go down to Montrose and Westheimer. There's like 7 or 8 thrift stores in a row. And he's like, all right, you going to be back before dark? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, go have fun. And I could see my uncle give my dad this weird look. And I'm like, whatever. I leave. I come back. I got like 3 friends with me. We're all laughing and giggling. Got a couple of bags. Maybe 2 or 3 shirts and a pair of pants, And my uncle like grabs me and pulls me aside. And he's like, what were you doing down there? And I was like, I was hanging out with my buddies. We were thrift store shopping and getting some cool clothes. Like, what do you mean? And my friend Marty he is gay, right? And he's like, you know what they do down there? And I was like, yeah, man, it's all right. I was like, kind of chuckling, right? And he goes, I don't want you down there with those baggots. And I haven't talked to him since that day. I was like, bro, you can't talk like that. What are you doing, man?
So I thought was funny was the 70s.
Montrose was awesome, bro.
Exactly. But I had to take a bus, from East Houston to get down there. And on Main Street, they had Parker Music, and I thought was funny was, I guess because of psychedelia, they had these brands of guitar amplifiers, and they had this opaque glass on them, and they had lights behind it. So it was supposed to be like if you're playing guitar, you're putting on a light show at the same time.
Dude.
And so, but what I wanted to tell you about was I finally got a car, and at the corner of Montrose and Westheimer was a Prince's Hamburger. And they had people on roller skates that come up to your car, and I thought what I thought was funny was, so one of the times I went down there, I said, I'm gonna have me a hamburger at Prince's, and my car died, and this car drive by, and there's these 3 gay guys in it, and it looked like it was the Village People. One guy, he had that leather cap on, he had the barber's mustache, and he had that ring, with his little leather shorts on.
That's awesome.
And so here you got these 2 guys coming out. Well, let's see, what's wrong with your car?
That's amazing. I asked my uncle, I'm like, what's your deal, man? You think that I was like, I like girls, man. Like, but I don't care if Marty here does it. And Marty's like, oh, shut up. And I'm like, what's your deal, dude? Like, why do you care so much? I'm like, you secretly into fellas, and you're just projecting that onto me, man. It's all right. Come with us, dude. We'll take you down there. I can't go to that bar.
But at the same time, we can say, hey, man, there's even punk rock bands. They're all gay. There's anything you can think of. I remember the time there was a band that it was nothing but Hasidic Jews. So the whole band was all these guys with these hats, long beard. So you think of so that's what's another cool thing about
Pink Panther, Limp Bizkit.
Exactly. Punk rock has everything. Supports so many things. And they're not trying to be activists. It's just
dude, do you, be us, hang out. Like
exactly.
It's not hard to understand. It's really short-sighted and closed-minded to think like, hey man, this dude doesn't think exactly like me, so I'm gonna make him feel shitty. It's like, dude, you're the one that feels bad, bro. Like, why do you feel so bad? What are you so uncomfortable about? Like, do I want to kiss a man? No, not personally. Is it gonna bother me if somebody else wants to? Like, what? I don't get it, man. I don't understand it. And I'm not trying to sit here on a virtue signaling. I'm not doing none of that. I just don't understand it. Like, I don't understand everything, but I'm also not
I don't think we even have to get about it. I don't think we even have to get into it, but it's just a shame that some people just some people just aren't built like that.
Yeah.
They're just so biased, you know?
Insecurities, man. You get raised in a household where they tell you this is wrong. You have a choice when you hit, like, I don't know, adolescence, man. Like, do you want to start thinking for yourself, or do you want to follow this machine you're put into? Here, man, go follow
But the
this.
punk rock community is such a melting pot.
Yeah.
There's just anything and anything you can think of.
There's bad people in punk rock. Let's not be ridiculous. But, like, man, it's overwhelmingly positive. My life has been changed for the better because of it.
I'll give you a perfect example. You know, when I first started buying Screwdriver records, I thought they were pretty cool. But then someone would go like, "Don't listen to them. They're white supremacists." I said I wasn't listening to it because of that. I'm just trying to find, you know, if they have a couple cool songs, all right. You know, don't let's not go there. You know.
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about that band because of all that. I just never got into them. And like, to my understanding, their first record or two was like a different lineup maybe. And then like one of the dudes like went.
The singer.
Well, the guy. Okay,
the singer.
So he broke bad in like the '80s and like reformed it.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, if you were a fan of that band before that, how do you blame somebody?
Exactly.
But I'm not gonna.
And here I'll tell you a story. You know what's really cool is nowadays there's been so many books that people now come back and recount the thing. There was actually they came from a scene over in a part of London where it was made up of nothing of Jamaicans and Indian people. It was a youth club, and their band existed, and they were basically like a mod band.
Who, Screwdriver?
Screwdriver.
Jesus.
You know, they really like, you know.
It's sad when you have a band that okay, full disclosure, I've only heard their first record like maybe once. I remember it being okay, it's a good record.
Well, let me tell you
like,
this.
I don't want to listen to that shit knowing what I know now, but I don't have the benefit of being around before that.
But yes, exactly, it's a shame.
It's a shame.
Because there was a time there wasn't even that in the midst.
But you know, had they just stopped and started a whole different band, those albums could still exist. Even with the guy being the same guy, they could still exist as good records. But like, I can't in good conscience.
It's tainted.
Tainted, and
like there's no way.
And anytime I do like a street punk video of some kind, that's the first band people bring up. I'm like, I'm not talking about it, dude. I don't care. I'm not gonna promote that shit on my channel, man. Like talking about it in like conversation about experiences in life is one thing, but in the comment section, like big up in these guys, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna do it. I don't care what record was good. I don't care what they were in the 70s. I don't give a shit. Like once you do, like, so what? You weren't a sex offender until the 80s, so before that, I can now be like, oh yeah, we're still buddies because I knew you before that. No, dude, you did some gnarly shit. You gotta go, man. Like it's real easy to understand. I mean, to me, you know.
And what do they call that movement now? You know how women have been going back on people who've said some really
like Me Too?
Yeah, the Me Too movement has gone back and shut down a lot of people.
And I mean, even that has a point where you're like, good God, man, somebody said something 20 years ago, they said something, like, actions are important. Yeah. Words can be important. Right. You know, it is a gray area.
But the reason I bring that up is because I grew up in a time, well, let's face it, a lot of the rock bands were misogynistic, you know?
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's kind of the norm, and let's just face it, a lot of stuff doesn't go away. It's still out there, and it's just...
Unfortunately, it is. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Anti-Flag, but I mean, look at that situation.
We've done shows with them.
Yeah, I mean, that dude turned out to be a big creep, and it sucks, man. It's like, then you like screw up your whole band's worth of all their hard work.
There's other punk bands that suddenly got trying to be a pedophile, you know. And it's like, so what do? You stop listening to them as well, you know, or they're done for or whatever, you know. So it's out there, it's everywhere. There's nobody who's immune from that, you know. But
how do you feel about that?
But the only reason I'm going to bring up is what's going to be bad is there's going to be someone who doesn't like punk rock, and they're going to use that example. Saying why it's all bad.
No, that is the problem. This is why we have to police our own scene to a degree. You have to kick those people the fuck out. If they're gonna act like that and behave like that, you cannot be associated with me. That goes for racism, sexism, any kind of abuse, any kind of like, honestly, like, you know, outside of that kind of stuff, you do whatever you want. Man, you can color your hair however you want. You can love who you want. You can do whatever drugs you want. I don't care about that. It's when you have hatred or you're doing violent acts. I don't have any time for it, man. I've been in bad situations myself. I'm not gonna go into
it.
Maybe
this doesn't answer your question, but I believe in second chances. I believe a lot of people.
I believe in second chances, absolutely. I mean,
to a certain degree.
Well, second chances mean that they need a second chance. But if 3, 4, 5. Like, when am I gonna tell you to fuck off?
Right.
You know. And also, there is a line. Like, if you physically touch somebody and they told you no, and then you did it again, I don't know that deserves a second chance. But if it was like a gray area, like, oh, he was hitting on me a lot, and I was just uncomfortable, I don't know about that. I usually just kind of exit that conversation. You know, I'm more about like, okay, did somebody physically do something? I think that's worth, you know.
But I don't know if I'm doing a complete turnaround. I just feel like, just like my new record, I'm just all about having fun.
No, that's exactly right. So, I mean, we'll look at like dudes like G.G. Allen that you mentioned earlier. He's a very polarizing figure in punk rock. Some people think he's hilarious and they like him and they listen to his music. Some people think he's a piece of shit. I kind of think he was a gnarly dude, but like, do I talk about him sometimes? Of course I do, right? So, who knows, man? I try to just be a good dude if I can, and I try to hang out with good people, and I try to just distance myself.
But like I said, I hope with, this may not have nothing to do with this whole conversation we just had, but getting back to the hates, I really just wanted to be very lighthearted with what I do. I don't want to be on a pedestal and I'm talking politics. Does that make any sense with my
Makes a lot of
record?
sense.
With my
Dude,
record?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that for a few minutes. So, I don't believe that punk rock has to be inherently political. Some people do. Sure, whatever. I do think a lot of punk rock is political, and I think a lot of rebellions, you know, maybe ends up that way for sure, right? But some of it is like you said. Do you remember what I said in the video about that album? It just made me feel good, man. The lyrics were positive, they're uplifting. So no, there is a place where you can have. There's a lane for that. There's a lane for the political stuff, and it all exists under the same umbrella.
So that made me feel good because you know what it told me? You got it.
Yeah, hell yeah,
I got
it.
the message.
Man, I was.
You got what I'm trying to
Dude,
do here.
it changed my whole. And I'm not trying to brown nose anybody. It changed my whole mood,
I
dude.
just want you to wake up, and if you're having a bad day, put this thing on, and I hope.
Well, see, that is exactly what I'm just talking about, though, because that you can't be that kind of person if you're the other kind of person. If you're an offender, a sex offender, or a violent person, or you're whatever, you're a hateful person, you're not going to understand that hates music.
Right.
So you're still doing your job because it's a litmus test. Hey man, check this out. What do you think? I don't got time for that shit. Ooh, maybe you should. Maybe you should listen to this. Maybe you should chill a little bit.
So here it was. I had the opportunity to do something the way I wanted to do it, and that's the direction I went with it.
Hell
That's
yeah.
the bottom line.
What are some of your bigger? I don't know how to ask this because you've been around long enough to where I feel like you're the influential artist at this point. But like, who are some of your influences? Who do you listen to? What kind of bands do you like? Give me some of your favorite just stuff. You've been around long enough. There's probably a long list. But
Well, one thing I'm really enjoying is I call it reverse engineering,
okay.
and I just think it's still cool that when I first bought a lot of these records, I knew nothing about these bands, and you couldn't read nothing about these bands, and now I'm finding things about which I didn't know. Like just only in the latest issue of Mojo, I just found out about the Saints.
Okay.
Because Ed Cooper is putting the Saints back together
No
after
shit.
the Australian tour.
That's crazy.
But
Saints
what
are good.
But what I didn't know, he worked at a record store, and all these country western artists would come into the record store because they had a pressing machine. And so these guys would do a recording, and he'd press a record. He goes like, well, hey, I'm going to go and get in touch with our singer Chris Bailey, and we're going to put out a single. Now, strange enough, they gave that single to the Australian EMI branch, and they hated it. And they wanted, but they sent it into Melody Maker in London, and it made their in the publication the alternative music, blah blah blah, top 10 or whatever. And then EMI in London go like, why haven't we tried to snatch these guys up? So they got in touch with them and said, sign these guys up and relocate them to London. And what I didn't know was after they did their first 2 albums, they had broken up by then when the album come out.
Isn't that crazy?
So I didn't know this information till just now. So I'm a big fan of going back and trying to still listen and find out about these bands I was first into.
This is the universe putting us in the same room for a reason, because I have been going back and listening to old punk music because I was born in '82. I didn't get into punk until the mid '90s. I never went backwards. I just heard I heard something, I liked it, I went with that, and then I moved forward. And so as an adult and as somebody who's got a platform, people are like, hey, what do you think about this band? I'm like, yeah, I don't like it. And then I started thinking, I was like, I don't know that I don't like it. I don't know that I've ever really heard much of it. I didn't really care for what I heard, and I never went back and dug into it. I just started listening to The Clash, dude. Last year.
So what I think is cool is now with the internet, you got these things where you see people post a picture of a record,
Yeah.
and then they record it and you're just watching that record, either a still or you're watching the record play on there. So I think it's really cool is there's some of my favorite early punk rock 45s, people are recording them and putting them out there for people to listen to. So another thing I just found out about was So the Clash, they got signed up by CBS, and the Sex Pistols, they got signed by several labels, but they kept on burning the label they were with. So like, I don't know if you knew the story, but the Sex Pistols, they got interviewed because the Queen, the singer, was sick, and they put him on the air, and they cursed on the air, and they got banned. They couldn't play anywhere. So the record label, EMI, called them up and said, we got to distance ourselves from these guys. So they got paid out, but all those records that got pressed that were fixed to be released, they just destroyed them. And I also thought it was interesting, I knew from years ago.
And was this something that was not Nevermind the Bollocks?
No, Nevermind the Box was on Virgin, which is their third record label.
Okay, so there was a different record that got.
Yeah, God Save the Queen was going to come out as a 45.
Oh, got you. Okay.
So the first thing that happened was the Silver Jubilee was going to happen, and the people that worked in the record plant, they refused to press it because they thought it was offensive because the Jubilee was coming. You don't write something offensive about the Queen.
Right.
They got that straightened out. So then they pressed up all these records. They were fixing. They were on white labels. The labels had been put on, but then they Bill Grundy, the Bill Grundy show, turned things around, and they go cancel the contract, pay them out, and destroy all those records. I was thinking, like, why destroy the records? And supposedly maybe one DJ or something, like, he's got a copy of that record or something like that. The reason I'm telling you this story is because there was another label at the time. They thought they were going to get the Sex Pistols to sign up with them. They're called Poly something.
Is it Polygon? No.
Anyway,
I know what you're talking about though.
they kept on missing out, and they didn't want to sign Susan and the Banshees because they didn't feel like they were going to be a really big hit. They eventually got the Cure signed, but they missed out. Malcolm McLaren promised them. He goes, "I promise you, we're going to sign to you." And the next day, the guy's reading the paper and he sees it. It's announced. EMI says, "We just signed the Sex Pistols." He goes, "I thought you said you're going to sign with us."
That would suck.
So then he's out there. There really weren't that many bands to find out to sign. So I think they eventually got the Jam, but they really felt slighted because they really wanted to get the Sex Pistols and they wanted to get the Clash. But the reason I'm telling you all this is I want to tell you the story about the.
Man, I can't believe that they destroyed all those.
So now I read about the French punk rock movement. There was this band which I thought was pretty cool. They're called Metal Urbane. They've got a drummer. They don't have a drummer. They have a metal machine. A drum machine. Okay. Well, there was another label. There was another band from there called the Guilty Razors.
Okay.
And whatever they're called, Polytone or Poly, they had an independently released single out, and they said, well, we're going to sign them up, and then they got cold feet. But they got them in the studio, they recorded the record, and they printed up all these records, and then they turned around and they trashed all these records.
Dude, I don't understand that shit for the life.
Because the Sex Pistols thing, they said, oh, these guys are too, and these guys are very obnoxious to go, we can't deal with having a bad rap, or bad, people are, it'll ruin our reputation if we've got a band like that on our label. And I'm going like, wow, why do you?
I mean, everybody was a lot more, conservative, prude, buttoned up. It's nowadays, it makes financial sense to be like, hey, that guy's got face tattoos. Let's sign him on here and let's put him on a whatever label, whatever imprint. And now you have like imprints. So like if this guy's signed over here to this little imprint, but it's actually Sony, if he fucks it up or whatever, Sony doesn't pay for that. This little imprint just goes away, right? That didn't really exist back then to the degree that it does now. They may have had some subsidiaries, but
I didn't realize that.
Now okay. You don't even.
So basically nowadays something like that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they don't care. They have a whole section for metal music and punk and hip hop and stuff. And like, if somebody messes up over there, they just go, well, that label's the one that looks bad, not us. So they can afford to just have these smaller labels underneath the Sony umbrella, the Universal Music Group. A little label like mine would be like, oh, let's buy his stuff up, and I don't own any rights to anything, but like let's buy a thing like that, so we'll have his catalog and whatever. If something happens, it's not them that has the explaining to do. It's the smaller label, and so the label just goes kaput. It doesn't matter. Start another one. And also, language and behavior is a lot different now, so people don't really have to worry about that. I mean, you have to do some pretty gnarly shit right now to get like have people look at you crazy, But dude, your band has been a staple in Houston for a lot of years, man.
I walked into Public News. There was a publication down in Montrose.
Okay.
And at the time we were playing at the Ale House. I don't know if people know about the history of the Ale House, but it's right there across the street from Whole Foods at Kirby, and there's an Ulta.
Okay, yeah, I know that.
Well, where the Ulta is at, in that parking lot, there was a house. It was
Okay.
turned into Ale House, and that was kind of our main, in the 80s, that was kind of our place where we played at. And it was part of 3 different pubs in town that was owned by a British guy, and he wanted to make sure he had a place where people who were British would go and feel
Okay.
like they were back in their type
Yeah.
of environment.
Familiar.
So, and another thing about people said, it used to be a house of prostitution,
Okay.
and then it turned into the pub that it was. But people over the years said that it was haunted.
Oh,
So-
shit.
So that was kind of a big thing.
Ah, I like that. That's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah,
I like
so
haunted.
those are the big stories about the place. But the big thing was they wouldn't sell.
Oh,
So
really?
it's funny how things are being torn down everywhere, and there was that thing, it was this eyesore.
Everything's
This-
gentrified except this one awesome place.
Yes, but they finally, I don't know what the story was there. And then another big thing for us was playing at a reggae club.
Okay.
And
What's it called?
It was called the Caravana.
I
And
know
they,
that one.
so they were a little club down in the Rice University area, just in
Okay.
the strip center. And what I thought was really cool was we used to play Paradise Island, but of course you want to branch out. And the bartender there, her name was Kat, she was working there on Monday nights, and she goes, "Monday's a dead night here. What if I talked them into them having a punk rock night?" But of course, it's like, well, we don't want to call it punk rock. Can we call it New Wave Night? Okay, you can call it New Wave Night.
Yeah.
So the Hates started playing there on New Wave Night on Mondays there. And I go, wow, we're playing a place that got air conditioning.
Hell
Because I used to look forward to playing. We played at Dies, and it was nicer to play in the winter time when it was cold
Right,
outside
right.
than playing in the summertime because you have to go out and get a little breath. So anyway, I thought what was really funny was I was purposely letting other local bands be the openers, and there was so many times these local bands would self-destruct before they even got on stage. They'd be back there fighting, and I go, "Where's the rest of the guys?" "Oh, we had a fight, man, and so just quit, and walked out." So we'd be the only band playing that night.
That's crazy.
And I was going like, "Man, this is crazy, man! You're giving local band, it's so it goes to show you some dysfunctionality of the people you had putting bands together."
It's always been like that.
But anyway,
Musicians are fickle people.
so what I wanted to tell you, what I thought was kind of cool, was from playing there. Later on, they tried to get out of that little hole in the wall and move to a big place. They went bankrupt.
Oh, that sucks.
They couldn't afford being.
When you talk to the people that own the venue?
The Caravana,
Yeah.
But being back there at the Caravana back then, what I thought was really neat was the class played on the university campus,
Okay.
and they said, "Hey man, it's early. Where can we go?" And they said, "Well, hey, let's take you down to the Caravana." And they came and watched us play.
No shit.
Yeah, and then there was another time Stevie Ray Vaughan was playing somewhere, and he said, "Hey man, it's early. Can we go somewhere?" And he came in and he watched us play.
That's badass, dude. To be able to say the Clash watched me play, that's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's wild. That is wild. So, well, right now it's the beginning of the year. Next weekend on January, I guess a week from today, right? January 11th, they're playing a show with some buddies of mine at Valhalla Rising. Valhalla Cinema, excuse me. Valhalla Rising is a fucking TV show.
Here's your play from 8 o'clock to 8:30.
Yeah, man. What do you guys have? Oh, Rising, I can't believe I said that. Sorry, dude. What are y'all's plans for the rest of the year? Do you have any other shows lined up? Are you trying to? I know you're going to go in and work on that record a
The
little
big
bit.
plan is to do that,
Okay.
and I want to press it as a CD.
Yeah, a CD. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I will get some information on that for you. It's not quite Monday yet. I'm waiting for the
No rush.
people to get
The
back in touch
most
with me.
important thing is for us to get back and remix that thing.
That's awesome. I
And
can't wait
for you to
hear
get to hear it, you critique it, and if you don't feel that something's right, I'm gonna go back in there and do some more
Oh, dude,
mixing.
if you pull the vocals up a little bit, it's going to sound awesome.
All
That
right.
was my only real complaint about it, was that I wanted to hear what you were saying. I was trying to hear, because I don't hear very well anyways. A lifetime of being around punk music, I should have put earplugs a lot sooner, but my hearing's not that great.
Yeah, I wear earplugs now. I can't get over how sometimes I go to a concert and I wake up next morning to go to work and my ears are still ringing. I'm going,
yeah.
"Oh my God, you should have put something in your ear."
I take my kids with me, and they all have to wear ear coverings. I'm not letting them ruin their ears over nothing,
Good.
But so, all right. I want to know if you have this information at the front of your brain. who are your favorite bands? Like just a couple that you really just always listen to. And if you could go, do you listen to any current bands right now? You listen to any modern music at all? Some people don't at all.
It's not that I don't. It's just that I'd have to go searching, you know.
There's too much of it.
There's too much of it, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
So basically what I do is I hit myself out like a bowling, what's that thing called? Punk rock bowling? I'll look at the,
That's the way to do it.
and I'll just Google, start Googling these bands and I get to hear a video of each band.
Yeah, you could go pick out which ones you like.
I really want to stress that I don't want to be one of these people that does not like listening to new music. You know?
Oh, I didn't get that impression at all. I just was wondering if there was any that
That's how I
stuck
do
out
it.
to you.
Yes, that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's how I do it. I mean, there's so much.
Unfortunately for me, I also have friends in London that they work merch tables.
Oh, nice.
And also, there's people that go to the thing that's in Blackpool,
Okay.
and that's a 3-day festival.
What is that one? I don't know. I've never.
Well,
looked
let's
at
start. I mean, I'm gonna. It's been going on for so long. I'm gonna get it wrong. But there used to be this thing they did it in another location. It was called something summer, and then they got holidays in the sun.
Okay.
And I'm like,
So it's just a big festival.
Just take this with a grain of salt. But I think holidays in the sun has also branched out. They do one in Germany and they do one in England. But now the thing up in Blackpool, it's been going on for decades now.
Okay.
That's how long it's been going on. It's
That's
a
awesome.
3-day punk festival.
So it's a big, long 3-day
Yeah.
thing. I would love to leave the country one of these days. Have you guys played outside the country?
Rarely, but yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, a lot of money to leave the country to play shows.
You know what that was really cool was when we first started, there was Bomp Records
Okay.
in Los Angeles, and they were mail order also. So they'd send you what they were selling,
Okay.
and I didn't think nothing about it. I said, hey, would you want to sell Hates Records? And I couldn't get over it. They would take this time. They would tell me each customer. I'd get a letter and say, did you know that I sold one of your records to a guy in Japan? I sold a record to a guy in the Philippines. I sold, just all around the world. They actually would tell me.
That's awesome.
Of all the records that they, of my records, that they sold. I was going like, wow, you guys are awesome.
So this year marks the 30th anniversary of my favorite record. It's Rancid and Out Come the Wolves.
Okay.
So I was like messing around in my office yesterday, and I pulled out my cassette tape, and I was like, I haven't listened to this in a long time. And I went to go pop it in, and I pulled it out, and this paper fell on the floor. And I was like, what is that? And I picked it up, and I was like, holy shit, I still have the mail order slip from Epitaph that came out in '94. And I was looking at all of it, and it's so crazy. They're like, CD is $11, but LP or cassette is $6. And it all included the postage, and I was like, man, how things have changed. But I remember sending in a check.
To me, that's a what do you call it, a marker? What do you call it when you're driving down the road and you've got a...
Like a mile marker, like a milestone?
Yeah, that's Epitaph Records coming out, because we've done shows opening for a lot of Epitaph.
Yeah, Epitaph had a lot of great bands.
Yeah. And SST when they came out.
SST was good.
We did shows with SST bands, and stuff like that. So to me, those are two things that changed, because I guess in some ways they signed bands and at the same time they shaped. To me, they changed the direction of what kind of music people were playing in punk rock, and people were like,
you do have the
I think especially more Epitaph. I think people really, and especially people with them, they said, I want to sound like that.
Oh, they had like the Offspring. I mean, that was a big record for an I think it's still the highest selling independent record of all time. Right. Offspring.
But I'm just saying, I think like what's really cool is, what's his name in Rancid?
Tim or Lars?
Tim. I think what's really cool is the show. He grew up being a big Clash fan.
Oh yeah.
But he got into ska because of his older brother, and I think that really says that's a turning point right there.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, Clash, and you'll find other people. You'll find the guy in the Beastie Boys. He was a big Clash fan. But I always call it the springboard thing. You have people who were into one thing, but they created a different genre of music.
Yep.
And the same thing, the guy in REM. It's the same thing. They were big Clash fans, but look at the music they created.
That's insane. What a influential band. I can't believe I didn't listen to their music until a few months ago. But you get there when you get there, man.
And another thing, the Clash. When I got the first record, what I thought was really neat was the U.S. pressing, as opposed to the UK pressing. There's a bunch of different records, a bunch of different songs on it. So people, I don't know if they're hip to that. You need to go out and trying to get
Yeah, I don't understand.
Generation X did the same thing.
Really?
They're US pressing and then there'd be 45s that had non-LP B-side. So you can really get into getting a lot more material by those bands just on their first outing.
Do you happen to know why they would have done that? Like, what made them make it a different, like, track listing? Like, why would they put?
I do not.
That's weird, man.
I just have one guess. You want me to guess?
Yeah,
They felt the American market would not like the material that they had on.
Yeah, I guess that's
And it's
an
a bit
obvious
weird to
reason.
think that the American, because that's why they got Sandy Pearlman to produce the record because
So strange.
they said you're supposed to mix it to sound like American market would like to hear it.
That's weird.
More like, so as opposed to
Music's good or it's not.
Yeah.
It's either good or not. But it sounds like some people are here to practice.
Yeah.
I think that's us being told that our time is
Exactly.
through here. I think we should do this again one of these days if you have the time and desire.
I'd love to.
Awesome, dude. Hey, thank you, Christian, for hanging out, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me about that record. Thank you for still making music. I appreciate that, man. It's really nice to see, man. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I got to come and hang out today. Yeah, you'll hear more of the hates on the channel. If you haven't done so already, go check out their back catalog. Is most of it on Spotify right now?
It is.
Okay, so you can go to Spotify. I'll put a link in the description. But go check it out, man. This is like literal history of where I come from, and it's important to me to have people like you on this show. So
All right.
thank you, man. All right, brother. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon, man. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that shit. We'll see you next time on the Punk Rock Review Podcast. Peace.